Well, welcome into another episode of the Storyworld Podcast. Steve Schramm, your boy Al. What's up, Al?
I am having a great night. Just got done filming one episode of our podcast and ready to
Mm-hmm.
roll on to the next one.
All right. What movie are we talking about? We're talking about two movie episodes back to back, by the way, which this is really great. We did a bunch of
Yeah.
parables back to back before. Now we're in the big screen for a little bit. So, what are we talking about tonight,
Yeah.
Alex?
So tonight is Shaun of the Dead. So if you haven't watched it, go watch it. We will be talking about spoilers. I wouldn't necessarily say this movie is spoilery. It's just kind of a whatever sort of movie. But if you don't
Yeah.
want to know, go watch it. And if you haven't, go and read our review of Hot Fuzz, which is kind of made by the same director, same actors, and
Uh
very
huh.
similar feel. So anyway, we have that out. But yeah, tonight is Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead. And I have to say, there's a lot of death in this movie.
A lot of
Just
death.
lots of
And a
death.
lot
It's
of
like
second deaths, if you think about it.
if you think about it, right? Yeah, they were not bashful about killing people in this movie. I mean, people died.
A lot of people, even more than in Hot Fuzz, if you can believe it, including all the
Even
people buried
more.
under the church.
Isn't that crazy, right? Kind of crazy to think about. Like lots of people dead. And one of
Yes.
my favorite things in the movies was it's so funny how like I feel like our discussion about the Tarantino movie just now, Inglorious Bastards, was very intellectual. Like there was a lot there, right? A
Yes.
lot to unpack. Okay, Shaun of the Dead, my friend, is this movie. Let's just say is not doing philosophy. Right? It's
No.
not doing the intellectual thing, except in the fact, which we'll get to this, of the category intent. I think
Yes.
the category intent was
Yeah,
spot on. It was the kind of movie that it was supposed to be. So
absolutely.
that is that. So how about you read the synopsis and we'll
Yep,
go from there.
absolutely. Sean is a 30-something. Sean is played by Simon Pegg, by the way. Sean is a 30-something loser actually he's 29 to be exact.
Interesting.
With a dull, easy existence. When he's not working at the electronics store, he lives with his slovenly best friend Ed in a small flat on the outskirts of London. The only unpredictable element in his life is his girlfriend, Liz, who wishes desperately for Sean to grow up and be a man. When the town is inexplicably overrun with zombies, Sean must rise to the occasion and protect both Liz and his mother.
Something I just noticed in this as you were reading the synopsis that look at me, I could take anything and turn it into a heady discussion, can't I?
Yes.
Is so right. So same actors, same director. Literally, like you buy the DVD and you get Hot Fuzz and
Yeah.
Shaun of the Dead on
Yeah.
the same film, on the same DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. And um, I find Simon Pegg's character to be the complete opposite end of the spectrum,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
I just thought
You're
about
absolutely right.
in Shaun of the Dead. Shaun is literally so dull and mundane and boring, and his whole entire existence is this way, that for probably a good 20 minutes, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of the movie,
Mhm.
this zombie outbreak is happening, and it becomes laughable because that's the point over time at just how oblivious to the zombie
Mhm.
outbreak he was, right? Because of how dull and boring his life is. And I mean, there is something there, right? There is something there that many of us just kind of like in our existence, life just kind of goes by us. But like in this case, I thought it was more interesting that in Hot Fuzz, his character was so driven and so like you know what I mean? Like he was a very driven character and he was an overachiever and he really drove the plot in that way. Whereas in Hot Fuzz, his character was like driving the plot from the front.
Mm,
I feel
yeah,
like in this movie, his character was being pulled along, just like
absolutely.
kicking, dragged, and kicking and screaming through the movie, which is a really fun dynamic for the person who's looking at him and trying to like gauge him as a dynamic character and like see these two people. Now, see, in my view, the fat guy, whoever he is, like Ed in this movie, and I forget what his name is in Hot Fuzz. There's actually a lot of similarity between their characters in either
Yeah,
movie, which
yeah,
I think is
quite a
interesting.
bit.
So,
I
Um,
wonder. I really want to watch the show that these guys ran. I forget what it's called to see how their
yeah,
characters compare in that. Um,
yeah, they're very clearly a great duo.
mhm.
Fantastic dynamic,
Yeah.
very very fun. In terms of general overall thoughts, I must say that this one to me does not live up to Hot Fuzz. I find this one, it was fun. There were a lot of laughs, and I don't know if perhaps um I by the way, I've never taken drugs in my life, okay? But but I do wonder if it's something like when I saw Hot Fuzz, it was like the first hit, of the Mary Jane or
Yes.
whatever. Again, I've never touched a drug in my life, but I wonder, people talk about how you kind of get that first high and then you're always trying to get back to
Mhm.
it. I know that Hot Fuzz was not the first one that they did together. Of course not.
Mhm.
Because they had this show and everything that I think actually predates those movies.
Yep.
I think, um, but for me, I first saw Hot Fuzz, and I
Yeah.
found that movie to be so entertaining and so funny that like I was hoping this one would be right up there with it, and it was still very entertaining and very very funny. But for me, not quite the spiritual experience that I feel like I had with Hot Fuzz. So take
Yeah.
that for what it's worth.
I agree. I think, and I just kind of I hit Reddit after watching Hot Fuzz, and I just kind of looked to see what people were saying about what they like better, which movie, and the majority did say Hot Fuzz, but you still had quite a few that said that they preferred Shaun of the Dead, and I wonder, it must come down to a matter of preference too. I can see how someone watching Hot Fuzz might not like the quickness, and it might feel a little
Yeah,
overwhelming, whereas I can see that same person watching Shaun of the Dead and just kind of appreciating, just maybe watching a little bit more reserved and just appreciating the kind of slow
yeah,
unfolding of it all. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate that too. But for
yeah,
when I watch these movies, I am looking for a great laugh. And you're right, Hot Fuzz is definitely delivers on that. Not to
yeah.
diminish Shaun of the Dead. I do want to make this podcast about Shaun of the Dead. Great story, really funny parts, great characters, but you're right, just doesn't pack the punch as much as Hot Fuzz does.
Yeah, that's right. And this, maybe it's just because I'm on a kick on this, but also maybe it's because of what we talked about on the last episode too. But back to the world building piece of it,
Mm,
right? So very clearly, genre wise, everything was, was aligned. But there is a couple things. For one, I don't feel like Shaun of the Dead had the dynamics to it.
mm,
It was sort of a slow burn in that British comedy sort of genre. And of course, zombie movie, right? The zombie movie genre combined with the British comedy. I mean, but it was pretty much that combo the whole time. Like the relationship was a distraction to me. It wasn't an interesting element of the story to me.
yeah, yeah.
It was very the relationship element of it was all very milk toast, right?
Mhm.
To me. Whereas with Hot Fuzz, you had the British comedy thing. In my opinion, it was turned up to level 11 on the British comedy dynamic of the fast pace and like the ultra stupid jokes that are just hilarious. Like,
Mhm.
it definitely had that stuff, but it was also so much more dynamic. You can't pinpoint Hot Fuzz, right? It's a romantic, like it has elements of the Romeo and Juliet thing, and one, it's got a Godzilla scene. It's got,
It's a
it's
slasher.
got, it's hilarious. It's a
It's the first
slasher,
slasher movie you've probably
slasher
ever
of
seen.
prices. Right. It is the first slasher movie I've ever seen, and so it had sort of a dynamics to
Mm,
it that I very much appreciate in a movie, as it should be obvious with Inglorious Bastards we just
yeah.
talked about. It was very much like that. Whereas Shaun of the Dead, it really wasn't. It didn't have that dynamic. It just sort of it was a slow burn and culmination to the end where basically everybody died along the way. And and then so here I'm gonna put a button on it after this, but I guess the way I would describe it is, again, even though it was great, the comedy felt forced and inserted,
Mm,
whereas the comedy felt like it was part of the world in the other. Like again, the fact that at the police station in Hot Fuzz, the way that they would punish people is by having an ice cream party.
yeah.
Okay, right? That is a
Yeah.
dynamic that is part of the world of the movie itself. That is itself a funny element, right?
I
It's like
agree.
it's funny on two levels, right? Whereas the stuff in Shaun of the Dead was more like yeah, the guy's a boring dude who works at an electronics store. Well, I was a boring dude who worked at an
Yeah.
electronics store. That's not exactly a great adventurous
Yeah.
theme for me. It's just I've been there, right? So I understand it.
And by the time they did kind of, I guess you could say, force some comedy into it, there were certain parts that the comedy didn't land. Um,
I
like
agree with that.
one
Yes.
specific scene that I thought of every time I watch it, I wouldn't say I get cringed by it. It's just kind of whatever is towards the end when they're in the bar and the zombies break in and they come in. It's actually when the bar owner, who's a zombie, comes up and to like the tune of the music, they're like hitting him with a broom, and it's just not that funny.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
you're right. I think
Yeah.
because the setting and the tone of the world, I think that I think it gets less funny as it goes on. Does that make sense? I feel like
Yeah.
that the funny parts are when they
Uh-huh.
first discover the zombies and they're kind of there just kind of lazy bum selves trying to figure
Yeah.
out how to go around it. I almost feel like they could have kept up that type of tone throughout. But again, I'm not the director. It's still a great movie.
Yeah.
It just some
Well, and
elements didn't land.
I know I agree. And so with Hot Fuzz, and again, I do think it's fair to kind of make this a comparison in some respects, right? So um in Hot Fuzz, there was this element of mystery, right? Because you
Mm,
had the slasher guy who like showed up, and so you didn't know what was going to happen next. And so you did have a big payoff at the
yeah.
end that was something more intellectual than everybody's getting eaten. In Hot Fuzz, everybody died, but it turned out to be this hilarious conspiracy theory on why the whole town died, and there was mystery and payoff and
Mhm.
reveals all the way to the very end. Whereas not only did you not have that in Shaun of the Dead, but there was another thing about it too that kept killing me. They kept doing something that would blatantly, obviously lead to destruction and stupidity. And I
Mm,
was like, I'm not actually finding this funny. I'm just finding this stupid.
yeah.
Perfect example is when they took the stepdad, when they put the stepdad
Yes.
who had been bit by a zombie in the car with them. And then, surprise, like they act all shocked when he's dead. And maybe that was like, or when he like starts to kill the others, and then they have to get out of the car. And it's like, that's not, he just got bit by a zombie very clearly. Like, why did you take him with it? Now, had they made the decision to right then he got bit by the zombie. The wife is over there trying to console, and Simon Pegg's character Shaun, obviously Shaun is wanting to make this connection with his stepdad, and he feels bad for his mom, so he's over there maybe trying to console her, and then maybe Ed just comes literally with the car and runs him over, or
That
like
I
takes the
actually think
bat
that
and
would have been
like
funny. Yeah.
right and like decapitates him or something like that. And it's like, and maybe even just an obvious look, like a duh, he just got eaten by a zombie.
And he
He
says,
needs to
"Cock it."
right, exactly,
Yeah. Right.
exactly, right. Literally shoots him in the face and says, "Cock it," like with the
Yeah.
gun or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Now that would have been hilarious, but instead they put him in the car, knowing that he would turn into a zombie, and they would all have to vacate the car later because when you get bit by a zombie, you turn into a zombie. Everybody knows that, and they had already seen it happen.
Yeah.
So there were little things like that that I was like, okay, I'm not expecting this to be a uh a thriller or like a mystery or whatever. It is just a comedy, and it's a zombie movie, so everything
Yeah.
gets worse until it doesn't. And so I understand that that's like consistent with the genre, but it's still, you can't treat your audience like you can't treat them like they're dumb. And so like when the actors make decisions on the
Mhm.
screen that wouldn't be consistent with the decision that you would make in real life under any circumstance, especially in a doomsday circumstance like that, like it took something away from me.
And the
So
dumbness of the village in Hot Fuzz makes sense because they're all kind of in this conspiratorial thing where everything is, for the greater good. And so you're right, it is
uh-huh.
part of the world. I wonder if, again, I could be totally wrong here, but I wonder if I think before Shaun of the Dead, it was their show. So I wonder if going from a format of like, I don't know, 15, 20-minute episodes, however long they are, to their first movie just was different in a way where instead of
Right.
creating a story arc maybe over an episode's worth, you had to make hour and a half, 2 hour long movie. And I could see how maybe that would create some difficulty with just some general pacing, maybe, and missing the mark
Yeah.
on maybe some things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could
Yeah.
maybe see how that could be jumbled a little bit in a
Yeah, maybe. I
transitionary
mean,
period.
another like obvious example is like why why would it be, and like everybody just goes along with it, like it would very obviously not be safer for them to get out and go out into this world and go and hole up in this bar where they literally have to wade through a sea of zombies to get to the bar.
Yeah,
How is that safer than them having originally stayed in the apartment?
absolutely.
They should have stayed in the apartment. It's multiple stories up. Literally, like Shaun had to climb up, and they never really gave. I mean, I think they might have tried, but it didn't really work. They never really gave a good explanation for why they really needed to go. Like that was clearly a
The
safer place to
Yeah,
be in my mind.
the half-ass thing was the zombies saw me come up here, so now they're gonna come. But
Right.
zombies don't
Right.
and,
Exactly.
like, throw some stuff down the stairs, like, clog it up with couch I agree. Yeah,
Right.
there's some things that you could
Right.
have done to
But like if he hadn't climbed up there in the first place, they wouldn't have seen him climb up there,
yeah.
right? So it was like that was dumb. Why would you do that? And if that was part of the intended dumbness, okay, fine. But I just didn't find it like it wasn't laughable to me in this
Yeah,
case. Like
and then
they didn't do the work to make that funny.
go to a bar where they stated earlier, and maybe they were trying to do it for comedic effect. Maybe that is true to show how stupid they are, but I don't think it landed. They go to a bar where they stated earlier in the movie that all they have is like crackers, like snacks. They don't even have real food.
Right, right.
So
Well, in the world of Hot Fuzz, you didn't hardly even need a reason when it was time to celebrate for the thing. Like, okay, when it was time for somebody to get punished, so they would have an ice cream party. Like
yeah,
the first time it was a little weird. And so right, so it wasn't as funny when that happened the first time. It was like, why are they having a like that's kind of funny. Like they're having
yeah,
a ice cream party. It was like ha 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 ha. But then the next time it happened, and the guy goes, "Don't you worry, we're gonna make sure he gets his just desserts."
yeah,
Boom, right?
perfect.
I was
Yeah,
I was
doubling down
rolling.
on it. Yeah,
Right? I was rolling there
yes,
because I had the expectation of in the world, these crazy idiots eat ice cream to punish people, which makes 0 sense, but it's hilarious. And then it was brought in with a funny storyline. So
mm,
I feel like they had the opportunity
yeah,
to do something like that here, right? And actually make it some kind of slapstick way of making it make sense of justification. Well, of course we need to leave here, or like maybe them leaving the apartment would have been like the first stupid thing, and then if they had some funny like justification for why they brought the dad with them or whatever,
yeah.
like I would have been like, oh, okay, well that was intentional. Instead it just seemed like they were making bad choices for literally no reason, and it wasn't really that funny.
Yeah,
I feel like I'm being really negative, but I'm holding it to a high standard because of how much I
because of
enjoyed
how
Hot
great
Fuzz.
Fuzz, yeah.
And it was a hilarious movie. Don't get it was a super funny movie. It was a great British comedy, and I still place it up there. But just my thoughts in general are it wasn't as good as Hot Fuzz for sure.
Yep,
So
yep, for sure. Um, yeah, let's get to the, I guess that's a testament too of just keep doing what you do, 'cause Hot Fuzz was the very next movie, and just look how,
yeah,
in our opinion,
look how
leaps and
much
bounds
better.
better it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
So plot-wise, we've kinda just talked about it briefly. I think plot was I would categorize it as good. It was your stereotypical zombie movie. Um,
Hmm.
the plot got rolling. There were some questionable decisions as far as, like, where the story led, but overall, it was a solid kind of run-of-the-mill zombie plot, when you're
Hmm.
just looking at the story elements of it.
Right. And they did bring in some pieces of it that made the zombiness sort of funny. Like there were rules, right, in the world about how you killed zombies and stuff like
Mm,
that. But again, those are all pretty standard zombie things too. My personal preference for a zombie movie is more like World War Z, where there's like
mhm.
a real threat.
A
It's a lot
real
more of a
threat, yeah.
serious tone. There's some sort of like sci-fi element to the resolution of the problem
Mm,
in the world, which I think they right. I think like the TV broadcasts at the end of
yeah,
this like said something about what it was and but not very much at all. And obviously, with it being a comedy, that wasn't the point, right? The
yeah.
point was kind of that everybody died. Um, And so it was good, right? Not great on the plot. It delivered on what you might think a funny zombie movie would be. I felt like some of the extra elements to the plot, like especially in the character design. So maybe we'll talk about that more with the characters. But like the constant like the slobbiness of Ed and like the relational dynamics with him and Liz. Most of that stuff I just really didn't find funny at all. I actually found it kind of distracting. And so like some of their antics together were funny, but like the actual elements of, you know, the relational dynamics I didn't find to be that interesting.
I
So
agree,
that's
and
where I'm at with the plot.
I agree, it wasn't super appealing there, and I don't think it had anything really to do with the movie, but I assume it was, Sean's ex-girlfriend there with her group of survivors too, that just kinda popped up here and there.
Right. It
It
kind of
was
looked, yeah,
it
yeah,
was
they
briefly
clearly had
comedic.
some history, right?
Yeah, it was briefly comedic because like, each, like, person kinda, like, represented the other one in the group. Remember there was, like, doppelgangers, but, um, yeah, you're right, just some kinda interesting
I did think
choices
that
there.
was funny.
That was funny, yep. Um, Emotional response. This is kind of an odd one for this. I guess it got the response from me that it wanted to. I laughed. I don't even
Mhm.
think as a zombie movie, it didn't wasn't supposed to make me feel frightened or grossed out or anything. I think it was just supposed to make me laugh, and I laughed a good deal at it. I think that's
Yeah.
very simply that's what it set out to do.
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I would put it like if I was individually rating each one of these, I mean, I would say it was good.
Yeah, it was
It
good.
was maybe
Yeah.
even very good. It elicited a very good emotional response, but not there was no emotional roller coaster. There
Mhm.
was no, there was none of the which even Hot Fuzz had elements of that.
Yeah.
Feeling for different characters in different situations. You didn't get so much of that in this. You laughed. And
Yep.
um
Yeah.
and it was what it was. So,
Yep.
yep.
Absolutely. Characters. I This one is another one that's up and down for me. I think Sean's character was great. I like Ed's character. I actually really like their roommate's character too. The guy with a stick up his butt.
Yeah, he was one of
And
my
so
favorites,
there
yeah.
were some great characters. I didn't like I like the mother. I thought she was really funny. Sean's mother, just your kind of stereotypical mother who doesn't want anyone to worry. I didn't care for any of the other three characters. I didn't care for Sean's girlfriend. I didn't care for her roommates. They just didn't do it
No.
for me.
Yep,
Um,
no. They were very
in any way.
boring.
Yeah.
They were very there was a couple moments. They had their moments. I honestly
Mm.
think I honestly think one of the best characters, and I'm really not saying that this is a good thing. One of the best characters in the movie is Sean's mom,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Because because of her dynamic. She's actually the most dynamic character in the movie. She's obviously, she's got ill feelings towards Shaun because of how he's treated his stepdad, but she also very clearly loves him and values him and respects his opinion. When she dies, she's kind of got like this hero
Mhm.
complex thing first of like she didn't want to be a burden, and so she didn't even tell any of them that she got bit. She's actually the character in whom I see probably the most not character development. I would say there was very little overall character development even happening in this. It's not a character-driven story, that's for sure, in my opinion. But the mom displayed the most dynamic range
Yeah,
in her character, and so I thought she was one of the
I
unsung
agree.
heroes. And the guy, yeah, the other roommate, I thought he was really interesting. I felt like, unfortunately, they gave him stuff to bicker about that wasn't very like, why live there? Like, I would never, like,
Mm,
just even live like, it wouldn't even be a question. I like, if I were him, again, I would've just moved out, right? And so, like, he's complaining about this guy who and all their antics, and some of the funnier parts of the movies was when, like, he would complain to Shaun about, like, the antics of him and Ed, but then, or about Ed, but then, like, Shaun would kind of be more on Ed's side, and so he would maybe do something funny
yeah.
behind the other guy's back or something. You know, there were elements of that that I thought were kind of funny, but overall, I found most of the characters, unfortunately, to be a little bit uninteresting. So the characters in this did not really do it for me.
I think that, it's weird critiquing a movie that's considered generally like a very great, strong British comedy movie.
Mhm.
But I almost think that it would have been a plot for funnier opportunities and just better for characters overall if, it was just Sean and Ed rescuing Sean's mother and trying to like keep her and just them three alive.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I could totally see that. Yeah. There's
Especially
something
since
that they could do with that. Yeah.
Especially since there was something about, for some reason, Ed, that he just loves, Shaun's mother to death, and they could just have kept playing on that in
Yep.
several different ways.
Yep. Yep. Exactly right. I feel like there were too many characters like in the group,
Mhm.
and of course they started dying off or whatever. But there was too many characters, and none of them were particularly interesting, right?
Yeah.
And so, whereas, like, and they were all like in so many of the scenes together. Whereas in Hot Fuzz, I feel like each character kind of got like their own little time to shine, and like
What's
I don't
funny
know, like
too is in Hot Fuzz, there were quite a few more characters, and I feel like
correct.
a lot of them. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, but there was whole storylines that were associated with, like, certain characters, like the storyline with the Romeo and Juliet scene and, like, the really rich
Yes.
guy and then
Yeah.
the blonde chick, like, that whole storyline got its own 15 minutes of fame within the movie,
Oh, yeah.
and then you kinda moved on from them, and you moved into somebody else's storyline, and so your focus was on different pieces, but then you had the comedic relief of some of the constant characters, like the slasher guy or the police chief, and stuff like that.
Do you remember in, Hot Fuzz after that scene where, what's his PC Danny, that was the name of the guy in Hot Fuzz, where he says he ends up copying Sergeant Angel. He said because we sat through 3 hours of horrible acting, and the kiss was the only realistic thing that would happen on that stage. I forget his exact wording, but it was just really
Right,
funny.
right. Yep.
Um,
Oh my
so
gosh, yes, for
so it gets
sure.
so it gets us to our last one, category intent. Um, this one, I think, yeah, I think it pretty much hit home on it. It's your
Mhm,
British comedy with not just British comedy, but it's got your British humor in it. Um, I think it pretty much hit the nail on it. It had some pretty cool like zombie kills, so nailed the
mhm.
category there with the zombie attack. So I think out of all the four categories you talked to, I think this one is the one that they nailed on the head, probably the best.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that assessment. Now, the way I would caveat it, because apparently I'm feeling very negative right now, the way I would caveat it is that if we were approaching a quality of execution score on the category intent, clearly the category intent with Hot Fuzz was very similar to this. Even though it's
Mm,
not a zombie movie, it's still got the British comedy element and there's the slasher stuff and all that. Whereas I feel like
mm.
Hot Fuzz was a brilliant execution on a similar category intent. This one was a good execution. It was even very
I
good. In
gotcha.
fact, it might have
Yeah,
even been great. You see what I'm saying? Like it was
yeah,
it was a great laughable. I mean, I laughed. It was a fun movie. It was a great laughable British comedy genre movie. So in that respect, absolutely, it did a good job. But we've talked about even a few opportunities, glaring opportunities
mm,
that they missed to make it a fantastic execution of
yeah,
the category intent. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it. So yeah.
absolutely. Well, that comes down to our final meter review, where the
Yeah, this
meat
is a tough one.
where the meat meets the pan. Um, you you had all right.
This podcast cannot be taken seriously. Uh,
No, nor us. So
mm,
you went first on Inglorious, so I'll go ahead first on this one. I would I'm gonna give it a middle rating. I'm gonna give it a bacon rating, which is a 3 on our scale. What do you say,
yeah.
Steve?
I actually was thinking the same exact thing. I am giving it a bacon. I feel like if this was a 6 rating scale and bacon burger was a 5 and steak was a 6,
Mhm.
that I would have chosen burger. You see what I'm saying?
Mm, yeah.
But because the bacon burger is right there in that, you know what I mean? It's kind of like just that halfway point between burger and steak, but like, not quite halfway. I don't know. For me, I felt like this was a bacon. I unfortunately didn't quite feel like it was a burger. They
Yeah.
probably could have rescued it
Mm.
and it become a burger. Which I'm sure is exactly what they were thinking about when they were making this movie.
Yeah, okay,
But
oh yeah,
apparently not,
the
right?
meat meter. Yeah, they
They probably could have turned this from a bacon to a burger if they had executed great on any one of the 4 categories.
mm,
If they made the characters a little bit more dynamic and less dumb, I probably would have given it a burger. If
Yeah.
they even if they didn't do that, but they had given a little bit more teeth to the plot, like Shaun and Ed ended up saving the world somehow in their
In a
slapstick
crazy way
way,
or something. Yes.
coming
Yeah.
up with a crazy cure. Like they found that if they were like they were in the bar and in a last ditch effort they like took wine and like threw it at the zombies, and they found that somehow that wine like neutralized the zombies, and then at the end of the day like basically wine sellers were like the news thing was about how wine
Yeah.
sellers were like
Get
business was booming
drunk.
for wine sellers
Yeah.
because everybody was getting drunk and
Yeah.
like literally like throwing wine at the zombies, and everybody was getting better, and the dead were coming back to life and stuff. Like had they just done something with the plot like that and executed great on it, I would have given
Yeah.
maybe a
Disappointingly,
burger.
for a movie that's supposed to be like very exaggerated comedy, the ending was just very stereotypical.
Very milk toast, very
Yeah.
bland. It could have been so it was a good movie. It
Yeah.
was
It was a
fun to
good movie.
watch. I would watch it again, although I wouldn't be like ultra excited to watch it again, but I would watch it again. But yeah, if they had done any one of those, great. I would have given it a bacon,
Yeah.
and if they had done two of those, great. It would have very much been a bacon burger. But
Mm.
anyway, this is how the meat cooks. So
Yes. And meats cooked differently. So
meats meats do cook differently. That's
yes.
true.
If you've
Just like
if,
cookies crumble differently.
exactly. If there's anything that's important to take away from this episode, it's that meats cook at varying temperatures, and certain meats at certain temperatures are better than others at those
Ooh.
same temperatures. You would think it
Ooh.
would you'd think it'd be the same, but 'tis not.
Ooh. Not only that, but I think about how like if you get like just the right amount of char on a steak, some meats do better in the fire than others,
Mm.
right? You think
Mm.
about that, and so I kind of feel like a steak can sort of be put through more of the fire and more of the testing and more of the trial than the bacon can, right? The bacon just kind of gets crusty and like falls
The
apart
the
in your
bacon
fingers.
is
Isn't
that
that
perfect
fascinating?
the bacon has to get that perfect medium where if you took it too much, then, oh, it's friggin' like brown, like black crispy bacon,
It's it's it's
it
awful,
chips, like, you
right?
chip it loose
Hmm.
with it, and then if
Yeah.
you get it all rubbery, you just well, it's
Yeah,
just
and
rubbery.
Impossible Meat burns up so fast. I hear that like it disintegrates, and there's an actual ticket there that says "Go to hell, admit one," and then you show that
Yeah,
to say he lets you in.
yeah, and that's why it's number 1 on our scale, and also why our podcast now is apparently somewhat, sacrilegious, so,
Yeah, who
yeah,
knew?
who knew? This might be a good time to end this episode.
I think so. I just wish we could. I wish we could end it on a happier note. Like
On
if there
a
was some good news or something. But I really just can't think of any. I mean, there's a couple wars going on at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
John Jones is out of the UFC event on the 11th
Mhm.
because he tore a rotator cuff or some kind of junk like that, got messed up, and so now it's Sergey Spivak versus Pavlovich, I think, which
Yeah.
is poised to be a
Still gonna be
great
good.
heavyweight fight, but still not. It's still not going to be the John Jones
Yeah.
versus the Stipe Miocic or whatever that I was looking forward to.
Just a lot of
And so
disappointments.
I was wrong with the world, really, when you look at it that way.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
I
So
hope you guys are excited.
on that note, we will see you next time. You know what? We're recording in another week or so, and even though we have ideas, we don't know yet what we're gonna be talking about. So
We
we'll,
don't
we'll have to
know,
do
and
some
so
brainstorming. We got a lot of good
w-
ideas. We just gotta
could be very exciting. Yes, there's
spew
so
them
much to
out.
talk about.
So
Yes, we could
much.
talk
We could
about
talk
lots of
about
things.
a lot. There's so many things. All right, Steve. It's too late.
It's too late. Bye, Alex. Have a
Bye.
good night.
Bye, Steve.